Welcome back, students. Uh, we'll continue with our syllabus. So, last time we were exploring some concepts and terminologies, and well, we have made significant progress, but there are a few more terms and terminologies to go. So, let's proceed. One of the terminologies that you all will be coming across quite frequently is something called property. So, a property is any macroscopic characteristic associated with a system. Thermodynamic properties can be observed, measured, or calculated. So, a property is a specific entity which can be actually measured and or calculated. So, properties. Before talking about properties further, I would like to visit the concept of something called point function and path function. So these are two quite important concepts which you all have to understand before we can go further in our exploration of what properties are and what are the different types of properties that we use. So a point function is any function whose value depends on its final position and not its path. So for example, let's take the property of potential energy. All right, so let's take the property of potential energy. So if you have got two paths to some position A, one goes up, one goes down like this. So this is path 1, and then there's the path 2. So I can imagine if you have to choose one of these two paths, you will probably choose the path 2, right? So you'd require a lot of effort for you to go up and down along this really bumpy path as compared to this smooth path. So, but what was going to happen at the end is that your potential energy with respect to some datum is going to remain the same in both of the cases. So we can call potential energy a point function. All right, so its value does not depend on the path with which the system got there. It just depends on its final position. All right, so that neatly brings us to something called as path function. Now, path function is a function whose value is dependent on how the system got there, or depending on the path. So, for example, if you have to move a box, or whatever that's close, nice and heavy, close to you, and you have to move from position A to position B, and you can move it like this in path 1, and the other path is something like this. It's a nice and convoluted path. So the work that you do, the work that you do, the force into displacement, the work that you do in path 1 is going to be far lesser than the work that you do in path 2. So work is an example of something called as path function. Properties are all point functions. Okay, so their values do not depend on the path that the system took to attain them. Properties are point functions, they are not path functions. Now, properties can also be defined or classified into something called as intensive properties and extensive properties. Okay, intensive properties and extensive properties. Intensive properties are properties which are independent of the mass of the system. Now, if you think about it, what sort of properties can be independent of the mass of the system? For example, pressure, temperature. These are intensive properties. whether whether you have 1 kg of water or which you have taken out from the river, or 10 kgs of water that you have taken out from the river, the temperature of the water will probably remain the same. If you have a balloon, or not a balloon, you have a box and you have filled it up with atmospheric air, whether you have filled up a small box, whether you have filled up a small box or whether you have filled up a large box, the pressure inside is going to remain the same. So it is independent of the mass of the system, and hence these are intensive properties. Extensive properties are the exact opposite. They are dependent on the mass of the system. All right. So you have got intensive properties which are independent, and extensive properties which are dependent. Now, example of extensive properties are, first of all, mass itself. Yes, mass. The more mass, obviously, you have, the greater its value. Then you have something like volume. So the higher the mass, the higher there is the volume, popularly. Then you have things like energy. So say kinetic energy is half m v squared. Okay, so that is kinetic energy. So energy is also an extensive property. Now sometimes we want to express these extensive properties in a way that we are not limited by the mass of the system. Okay, so we want to find out how much a unit mass of the system, what property would be assigned to a unit mass of the system. So to allow us to do that, we come across something called as specific properties. So specific properties are properties which are your extensive properties per unit mass. So it's extensive properties divided by the mass of the system. All right. So for example, if you have got kinetic energy and you want to express it as a specific property, you're going to express it as half v squared. All right. And the way what we do is that to imply that we are expressing a specific property, we normally write it in small letters. So if we are writing kinetic energy as capital Ke, so for to actually imply that it is a specific property, we would write small ke. All right. So we have spoken about what are properties, that they are point functions. Then we have talked about different types of properties. We have talked about intensive properties and extensive properties. Intensive properties are independent of mass. Extensive properties are dependent on the mass of the system. And then to convert an extensive property into an intensive property, then what we do is we call it a specific property, and we divide the extensive property by the mass of the system. All right. And to represent an a specific property, we write the notation in small letters. All right. So this is about properties of a system. Then we have to talk about state of a system. All right. So a state is a unique set of conditions of the system at any instant of time. It can be described or measured by its properties. So for example, you have today's weather. We know the atmospheric pressure, we know the temperature, we probably know the wind speeds. Okay, so using certain parameters, we know the state of the atmosphere. All right. Now the states can change from one state to the other. All right. So for example, in the morning it's nice and cool. In the afternoon it will be nice. It will be pretty warm. So the pressure will change, the temperatures will change, the wind speeds may change. Okay. So these are known as the unique state of conditions. that you can assign to a system is known as a state. All right. Then we have to talk about something called as state functions. So thermodynamic property are sometimes called as state functions because they depend only on the state of the or condition of the system. And this is what we talked about earlier. State functions or point functions. All right. So your thermodynamic properties are also known as or also are state functions. They are also mathematically they are called point functions, but in thermodynamics you call them as state functions. Okay. Then after we have to talk about something called as path. Now, as I told about the atmosphere in the morning, you have got say one set of conditions P1, velocity 1 and temperature 1, and in the say afternoon you have pressure 2, velocity 2 and temperature 2. So now this condition moved from condition 1 to condition 2, condition 1 to condition 2, and in doing so it didn't happen instantaneously. It achieved a series of intermediate steps, somewhere here, somewhere here, somewhere here, somewhere here, somewhere here. All right. So a path refers to the series of states through which the system passes during. Okay. So a path refers to the series of states or state changes through which the system passes. Okay. So this is the path that the atmosphere took for it to achieve state 2 from state 1. Then we have to talk about something called as process. Now we talked about a path. What is a path? Path referred to as a series of state changes through which a system passes during a process. So a process is something that if any property of a system changes, the state of the system is said to change. All right. Therefore, a process is that which causes the system to change. So a process is something that causes the system to change. Okay. So for example, again, let's take the example of your atmospheric conditions changing from morning to the afternoon. Your pressure change, your velocity change, your temperature change, so on and so forth. And it took this path from path 1 to path 2. So the process which was happening, which caused this change, was probably the heating of the atmosphere because of the sun. So you had the sun, and it was heating the atmosphere, and that caused the state to change from 1 to 2 and taking the path from 1 to 2. All right. So the process is something which causes the state to change. So in this case, this was probably heating due to the sun. Okay. So this was a heating process. Similarly, you can have a cooling process when the sun goes down, so on and so forth. Okay. So now you have to understand that there is something called as a path and there's something called as process. Now, in this case, because of the heating, this system moved from state 1 to state 2. Following this path, say let's call this path A. All right. Now this process, the process of heating, caused us to move from state 1 to state 2 via this path A. In most of the cases, thermodynamics, our processes and paths are quite interlinked. They are quite interlinked. So if you have a path, this is usually assigned to a single type of process. All right. So if even in heating, there might be a specific kind of heating which causes this path, this specific path, if you cause a different kind of process, the path may change, or quite likely will be a different path as compared to uh, the original one. All right. So you have to understand that path is process dependent. Is it understood? Okay. Now, if you have a series of paths, and they go from, say, state 1 to state 2 to state 3 and back to state 1, we come across something called as a cycle. So a cycle is defined as any process or series of processes whose end states are identical to the initial state. Okay, so this is an example of a cycle. Other examples of a cycle are, for example, Otto cycle. Now the Otto cycle is used in your petrol engines. Okay, so in a petrol engine, you have got a piston in your cylinder and it moves up and down, and at the end of the cycle your engine returns to its original state. So once you shut off the engine, when you are going to restart the engine, it is not starting from a different set of parameters. The parameters are the same as the first time you have started the engine, okay, or the first time the cycle was initiated. Then we have to talk about something called as phase. A phase is defined as the quantity of matter which is homogeneous throughout, both in chemical composition and physical structure. For example, we talk about solid phase, liquid phase, and gases or vapors. Okay, so we popularly talk about three phases of matter. So we have a solid phase, a liquid phase, and a gas phase. So if we take a solid phase, the table which you have, the sugar which you're going to be putting in coffee, whatever it is, it is going to be throughout its physical structure, the chemical composition is going to remain quite similar, and the physical structure is also going to remain quite similar. Okay, it will not vary greatly from position A to position B. So once you achieve that, you call that whatever you have a phase, a single phase. So we in thermodynamics primarily talk about three phases, as I've just mentioned: the solid phase, the liquid phase, and the vapor or the gaseous phase. Okay, now how do you define a solid phase? How do you define something as being solid? So solid can be defined as a phase in which the structure of the, the, the component or whatever you are trying to measure does not require something to support it. It will retain its physical structure regardless of even if you apply a small amount of force, it will still try to retain its physical original structure. It will not shift. So for example, you have a box or a piece of rock. If you apply a small amount of force, the shape of the rock will not change. Okay, so it retained its original shape. That is known as a solid. Now, a gas, let's go to the other end. A gas or a vapor phase is something that, well, you require a physical and enclosed container to hold it, and it will occupy the shape of the container that you introduce it to. So the gas molecules will move around, and they'll occupy this entire container. Now if you have a triangular container for some reason, it will occupy this triangular shape. All right. A liquid phase is between the two. All right. Now in a solid phase, what happens is that your molecules are bound together by bonds. They're bound together by bonds. As you heat it up, what happens is that there occurs something called as a phase change. You move from solid to liquid and liquid to gases. In the liquid phase, what happens is that these molecules uh, can move relative to one another. So in this case, these molecules in the solid phase, the molecules are locked. In the liquid phase, they can move relative to one another. Okay, but at the same time, they will not expand and occupy the total volume that it is introduced to. So if you have a small glass, it will occupy this lower portion of the glass. It will not try to fill up the entire glass, like the case in the gases. Another property of liquid phase is that it has no to very little resistance to shear. So for example, what is shear stress? So shear stress, if you have liquid down on the ground, if you have some liquid down on the ground and you apply force in this direction, in this way, some force this way, parallel to the ground, that is sort of a shear force, and it will not provide any resistance. And you've probably seen this. You do not want to go sliding around when there's water. People talk about, right? There's signs: wet floor, do not run or do not walk, whatever it is. That's because this will reduce the amount of friction. It will because it does not provide any resistance to shear. It will just allow you to move and it will cause you to slip. So liquids do not or liquids and as well as gases, they do not have any or very little resistance to shear stress. Okay, so liquids and gases together are termed as fluid states, and that is because they will occupy the general shape of whatever container that they are introduced to. So if you have a triangular wine glass, say, your liquid will occupy that sort of a level or that sort of shape. If you have a if you're James Bond and you have a martini glass, it will occupy that nice triangular shape. Okay, same thing for gases, as I've already told, but it'll occupy the entire space, not just the bottom bit. So in this case, it occupied the box. In this case, it occupied the entirety of the triangular box. Then we have to talk about a homogeneous system and a heterogeneous system. A homogeneous system is a system which contains only a single phase. A heterogeneous system is something that contains more than one phase. Example of a homogeneous system is the atmosphere. Okay, so the atmosphere contains different types of gases. Yes, they are slightly chemically varying, but at the same time, they in the most general terminology, they are all gaseous phase. Okay, so you have got different types of gases. They have got 79% or 78.9% of nitrogen. You have got 20.9% of oxygen, and it's more of 20.99 and 79.99, 78.99. And then you have got trace amounts of other gases such as carbon dioxide, nitrous oxides, carbon oxides, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and and then sulfur oxides as well. Okay, so these are your trace gases, and again your noble gases. So you have got some amount of helium, so on and so forth. So this is an example of the atmosphere is an example of a homogeneous system. A heterogeneous system is a system that contains more than one phase. For example, in a pressure cooker. For example, in your pressure cooker, uh, what is happening is that as you're heating it up, there's some amount of liquid which is there. If you're cooking some amount of rice, then it's going to be liquids. Above the liquid, there's going to be some amount of gases, that is your air plus water vapor. And then you also have your, the content, so that will be solids. Okay, so it's a mixture. So this is an example of a heterogeneous system. All right. Then we have to talk about something called as thermodynamic equilibrium. Thermodynamic equilibrium. Before thermodynamic equilibrium, we have to talk about three different types of equilibriums. And what is equilibrium? All right. So equilibrium is when all of your driving forces, all of the driving forces for the process in question are balanced. Okay, so all of your driving forces for the process in question are balanced. For example, you have a you on the floor right now, you have a ball. Okay, the ball experiences gravity. Yes, it's trying to pull it down further into the ground, but the ground is offering some amount of uh, reaction which is equal and opposite to it. Newton's third law of third equation. Uh, so for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So in this case, the force of gravity is in equilibrium with the reaction of the provided by the surface of the on which the ball rests. Okay, so this is an example of mechanical equilibrium, where the driving force, that is your mechanical force, where your the gravitational force is in equilibrium with the reaction to it. So all of your mechanical, all of your forces, all forces are in equilibrium. Then we'll talk about chemical equilibrium. Chemical equilibrium, what are the driving forces in a chemical process? Where say you have got salt and water. If you have got salt and you add it to water. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is that this causes the salt to dissociate, and the process moves so that you have got some amount of sodium ions, some amount of chlorine ions, and then you have some amount of hydroxyl ions, and so on. You will have the H plus ions, and will go in this state, but at the same time, it will not accelerate towards this. It will retain this. The salt basically dissolves in water, and it will achieve some sort of an equilibrium where it cannot dissolve more. Okay, so if you keep on adding more salt and water, it is not going to dissolve more. So in that case, it's going to achieve something called as chemical equilibrium, where the driving forces in a chemical reaction have attained equilibrium. Okay, so you have got mechanical equilibrium, you have got chemical equilibrium. Then we talk about thermal equilibrium. Okay, so a thermal equilibrium simply is that there is no net amount of heat flow. So for example, you take two glasses. You take two glasses and you fill it up with the same tap uh, in glass A and in glass B, and you bring them in contact with each other. Now, since they are from the same tap, the temperatures are the same. This is also T, this is also T. Okay, so once you get them in contact to each other, there is no net amount of heat flow from glass A to glass B or glass B to glass A. So in that case, we call that there is thermal equilibrium that has been reached. Okay, now when you have got all these three, when you have got mechanical equilibrium, when you have got chemical equilibrium, and when you have got thermal equilibrium all existing together, we term it as thermodynamic equilibrium. All right, so when you have all three types of equilibrium, mechanical equilibrium, chemical equilibrium, and thermal equilibrium, you will attain thermodynamic equilibrium.